You need to know the rules of debit and credit so that you can record transactions for a business. Now here I have what's called a T account. This is the basic summary device in accounting. It has two sides. The left side is called the debit side, or you can write it DR for short. The right side is the credit side, and you could write that CR for short. What does debit mean? What does credit mean? Debit just means left side and credit means right side. Now we have different rules for different types of accounts when it comes to debit and credit. Let's look at that. I have assets, expense and dividends. They all follow the same rule. Debit side means increase and credit side means a decrease. Now over here I have liabilities, equity and revenue, and they all have the opposite rule, with the credit being the increase and the debit being decrease. Now when we record transactions, we always use these rules. One example of a transaction is the company purchased supplies for $100 paying cash. Now we want to record this transaction in the journal using the rules of debit and credit. I've shown you the format here for a journal. You have the date, the accounts. The debit account always goes first. Underneath you write the credit, and then you put the amount in the debit and the credit column. So the first thing to do is to identify what are the two accounts affected. It must always be at least two. I can see in this transaction that we've purchased supplies and we have cash. So I've identified two accounts. Next step, are they increasing or decreasing? If you purchase supplies, your supplies are increasing, you have more. And if you pay cash, your cash is decreasing, you have less. Next is to identify which one is it. Is it an asset, expense, dividend, liability, equity or revenue? And this is something that you need to learn. I know from my studies that supplies is an asset for the business, and I also know that cash is an asset. So that's interesting, they're both assets. So to answer this question, I need to use the rule for assets, which is over here. An increasing asset is always a debit. So this is going to be a debit. A decreasing asset is always a credit. So this will be a credit. There will always be one debit and one credit. Now I'm going to write down my answer. I always write the debit first. So I write supplies here and put the 100 in the debit column. Underneath I write my credit, which is cash, and I put the amount in the credit column. And I write it is.